So our next column here, which is the high pressure contactor, or in some places they actually call them absorbers because, well, that's where the absorption happens. But originally the plant was designed and it was this whole vessel was named contactors, so I'm just gonna refer to that as a contactor, but it just means absorber. So contactor is where actually our magic happens. Here our acid gas interacts with the amine solution, and what happens is amine solution actually absorbs the acid gas from our product, and as a result of that we are left with just the hydrocarbons. The amine solution absorbs hydrogen sulfide and carbon dioxide into it and carries it away. And what we left with as the overhead output from our contactor is the sweet fuel gas, sweet hydrocarbons. So the logic here is that originally we had sour gas, sour water, and once we remove the hydrogen sulfide it becomes sweet. You get the logic, right? So let's talk about some more terminology here. So what is lean amine? Lean amine is basically amine that hasn't absorbed any hydrogen sulfide into it yet, and rich amine is, well, it's the amine that had absorbed hydrogen sulfide in it. So this absorption reaction actually produces heat because it's an exothermic reaction. So when basically our acid gas flows from the bottom inlet of the column to the top, and our amine flows down from the top inlet and it goes down. So, and as you can see over here inside of our column, we have so many little trays in here. So as the amine flows down and the gas goes up, so we have a lot of surface area for the lean amine to interact with the acid gas and absorb all of the hydrogen sulfide in it and carry it away with it. I actually completely forgot. I have some effects here I can show you that I also made. Well, it's not really effects, but it's some more colors. So if you were to imagine inside of the vessel, what enters is this little green dots, which is your acid gas, and from the top you have amine, which is I decided to use blue. As they interact, the hydrogen sulfide gets absorbed from the acid gas. So you're just left with hydrocarbons, and I've shown the hydrocarbons, which is the fuel gas as well, as those brown little dots that you might actually not be able to see because of the color I chose, but it's those brown little dots. And as the amine solution flows down and interacts with the gas, as it absorbs the hydrogen sulfide, it turns into this yellow dot that I shown here. By the way, here's the wash water column, and here's the knockout drum. So I hope you like my art here. So this is the high pressure absorption system. So now that we talked about it, you understand what's going on here. To summarize, again, we start off with getting a mixture of gas and liquid into our knockout drum. We get rid of the liquid, we end up with gas. Then we wash our gas to get rid of the heavy hydrocarbons and the organic acids. And then we get that into our absorber, our contactor, where our acid gas contacts with the amine solution, and that amine solution absorbs the hydrogen sulfide. So we end up with just the hydrocarbons, we end up with the fuel gas. The low pressure absorption system is very, very similar, except it's missing wash water column for some reason. When they designed the plant, I don't know what is the reason that they decided not to have it, but they don't have it for the low pressure system. And it's exactly same situation minus the wash water column. We have the swag entering. Now we don't have a three-way valve in here. We actually just have a valve that goes to the flare system, and then our gas just gets into the knockout drum. Again, liquid gets knocked out, and our gas just goes directly straight into our low pressure contactor. So now we're gonna talk about the amine system and how it gets recycled, because our amine is actually reused in a closed loop system where it constantly absorbs hydrogen sulfide from the acid gas, and then it lets it out at the regenerator. So let's start at our high pressure contactor. So what enters our high pressure contactor is lean amine. I don't know if we talked about the temperatures yet, but our lean amine actually has to be slightly hotter than the acid gas in order to avoid cooling the acid gas and causing the vapors to condense and stuff like that. By the way, I forgot to mention that there's also a mesh screen demister here as well to not let the vapors and liquids pass the top, right? Anyway, once our lean amine reacts with the acid gas, it becomes rich amine. It absorbs all the hydrogen sulfide, becomes rich amine. From there, it actually flows in our low pressure contactor. It actually enters at the bottom of our low pressure contactor where it mixes with the rich amine that's being produced in the low pressure contactor. From there, all the rich amine that has been collected goes into the Amine Oil Separator. Oil separator separates oil from our amine solution, because sometimes we get a little bit of oil droplets that are suspended in our amine solution that we would like to get rid of because they decrease efficiency of everything. So as our rich amine enters the oil separator, it goes through the diffuser plates, which help direct our rich amine across multiple horizontal baffles. And the purpose of the horizontal baffles is to provide like a large surface area for the oil droplets to coalesce together. So meaning that a lot of little oil droplets are gonna come together and form big droplets, and then they're gonna float together to the top of the vessel and get collected in there. So that's kind of like basic oil separation based on the difference in density, buoyancy, and gravity and stuff like that. Then from our amine oil separator, our rich amine flows into the feed bottoms exchangers. The purpose of our feed bottoms exchangers is that they transfer heat from our lean amine that exits our amine regeneration column. It transfers heat to our rich amine. There are two stages of heat exchangers, and then from there our warmer rich amine enters the amine regenerator. So the basic idea behind amine regenerator is to reverse our reaction we had earlier. So when amine absorbs the hydrogen sulfide, it generates heat. And then if we add heat to our rich amine, then it releases all the hydrogen sulfide it captures for further processing and stuff. So let's take a closer look at what happens here. So our rich amine enters through the top of the amine regenerator vessel and flows downwards. At the bottom of the amine regenerator, we have those little coils. Well, I shouldn't probably call them coils, they're like tubes, a pack of tubes, through which we have 50-pound steam flowing, which is what you see in there. Those things are called reboilers, so they help boil the amine. They help add heat to the amine solution, so it releases the absorbed hydrogen sulfide. So at the bottom of this column, we actually have kind of like a mixture of amine solution and water, because in amine solution there is water, and all of that stuff actually flows to our other reboilers, because besides the reboilers we have embedded into our column, our regenerator column, we actually have the external Kettle-Type Reboilers over here. If you've never seen like the Kettle-Type Reboilers, I'll actually include a picture here, like, you can even search it up yourself. There's so many pictures of them. They're kind of like a funny looking version of heat exchangers, but They're not quite the heat exchangers because their purpose is not just to transfer heat but also to boil. So that's why we have this part that kind of expands towards the end there. So in those reboilers we have again the 50-pound steam that enters and travels through the tubes and then leaves as a condensate. And what that does, that warms up the amine solution inside of the reboilers. It boils the water and boils the amine solution. So what leaves our reboilers through the top is the steam, and then the steam goes back into our amine regenerator, enters through the bottom above the reboilers and travels to the top. And this is our stripping steam. So it's a steam that helps transfer the heat, because in this situation, like I said, in order to get rid of the hydrogen sulfide that has been absorbed by the amine, we have to add heat for the amine to release the hydrogen sulfide. And then our liquid amine, which is in this case is actually lean amine, leaves the bottom of the reboilers and goes to the feed bottom's heat exchangers, where it once again transfers heat from our lean amine to the rich amine. This is like a sort of a economizer, if you know what that means. It's basically, we don't want to be wasting heat because heat equals money and power and energy and stuff like that. So we want to try and save as much of heat as possible. So whenever we can, we just transfer it from one liquid or one fluid to another and stuff like that. So once our lean amine passes through these two stages of heat exchangers, it becomes slightly colder, and then it goes into our lean amine coolers, which is the fan type coolers, where you just have a pipe coming in, it splits into a bunch of tubes, and literally at the bottom you have a fan that's spinning and blows air through. So it's like an air cooler. And then at the top you have like louvers, which can be closed up or opened up to let in more or less air and stuff like that. So from here our lean amine actually goes back to our contactors, and this is the entire loop that the amine goes through. One more thing I wanted to mention, and I completely forgot about, is that our lean amine solution needs to be as cold as possible, but not cold enough to cause hydrocarbons in our contactor to cool down. So as you can see, there's a lot of care that needs to be taken to maintain the temperature in order to achieve the most efficient absorption and regeneration as possible. Now there's also like a filtration system that they have in place in order to help get rid of particles and stuff like that. So one of the pump dischargers actually goes into this set of filters, 3 stages of filters. The first stage just removes the particles from the amine. So the second stage is our active carbon filter, which absorbs hydrocarbons and other impurities. And the third stage is our final stage filter, which removes the remaining particles and also removes the carbon particles that came from our second stage filter. And then amine is being fed back into the loop. And we also have like an amine storage tank in the plant. So in case we need to add more amine to maintain a good amount of amine in our loop system. So if we ever need to add more amine to our closed loop, then we have amine storage, which can provide us with more amine, makeup amine that is. Going back to the amine regenerator, what we haven't talked about yet is the overhead system. So what leaves our amine regenerator from the top is mostly hydrogen sulfide. And the first thing, it goes into a condenser. Again, it's the fan type cooler, which has a bunch of small tubes and a fan that draws in air and cools down the gas in there, right? And after that, we actually have an overhead vapor accumulator where our cold hydrogen sulfide is separated from water vapor and amine vapor. That water and amine is being fed back into the regenerator using our amine reflux pump, whereas the water and the amine descent, they interact with the hot steam that's coming from the bottom, and this way we ensure that we get rid of all of the hydrogen sulfide that has been absorbed in the amine. And that's why it's called the reflux pump, because it refluxes back our condensate into the system. Alright, so from the overhead vapor accumulator, our hydrogen sulfide goes into the acid gas condenser, which is, by the way, is just another generic heat exchanger. And in this heat exchanger, again, we have cold water, which cools our acid gas, our hydrogen sulfide. And then we have two stages of knockout drums, which separate our hydrogen sulfide from amine and water. That amine and water actually are being fed back into the oil separator for reprocessing and stuff like that. And then our hydrogen sulfide gets to the next unit in plant 8, which is SRU, sulfur recovery unit, where it gets processed and elemental sulfur, just like what I showed you earlier. Where is it? Elemental sulfur like this gets produced. So it's time for me to show you pictures as we're done talking about the actual process. So let's take a look at the equipment in the field. So unfortunately, I've never worked with any of those pieces of equipment before, so I can't tell you for sure which pieces of equipment are what, but let's take a look at this picture that I found anyways. So as you remember before, in our previous videos, we have discussed coker towers, so you can partially see coker tower in here. Also, you can see a very tall stack. That's actually the stack for the furnace that's located in SRU, and that's actually where I worked on the SAMS system. On this lower platform, they actually have like all the probes that go inside the stack to measure the emissions and stuff like that. So in plant 8, I spent most of my time in there, but I have walked by this area. I think back then I just never paid attention to what was actually happening in here, and I didn't know anything about the amine system. So the two tall vessels we have in front of us, one of them, I'm assuming the bigger one, is the high pressure contactor, and the smaller one is probably the low pressure contactor. So this is where our lean amine reacts with the acid gas and absorbs all the hydrogen sulfide from the acid gas. Then we have a smaller column in front of us. This is I think is the regenerator column, where our rich amine gets heated up and releases the hydrogen sulfide, and the hydrogen sulfide gets to the next step and stuff like that. Behind over there we see like a big, to me it looks like a tank, and my guess is that this would be the amine storage tank, but I don't know exactly for sure. And then in front of us we have this big vessel, and from my understanding this is actually the oil separator that we talked about earlier, which is to me kind of crazy because I don't really know anything about equipment size, and so seeing things like that is actually kind of crazy. And at the back there, on top of the piping rack, we actually have our coolers, which I was talking about earlier, you know, the ones that have a lot of tubing in there, the fan at the bottom that spins and rolls the air, and then we have like louvers at the top to control the amount of air getting in. So what's interesting is I actually just noticed this plant has been built like a long time ago, right? 67. What I'm seeing here, I think I'm seeing a dead leg in here. So this little pipe that goes up and then just kind of ends here, this is what we normally call a dead leg, and it's essentially just a part of the piping system that's used to be used back in the day, but nowadays it's abandoned. So maybe back in the day this pipe used to connect to this vessel, but then maybe they changed the process flow and now they don't need this pipe, so now it's abandoned and it has become a dead leg. And then I think I see another dead leg over here, where it just kind of ends like that. So yeah, a lot of abandoned piping in this area that we can see. The problem with dead legs is that the liquids or the gases don't flow inside of the dead legs. So in the winter, in those places where there's no flow, you can actually have liquid or gas freezing or condensing and stuff like that. So yeah, I've actually participated in a couple of projects where we worked on dead lag mitigation, or there was another project where we worked on heat tracing the dead lag, so meaning that we were installing electrical heat tracing onto the pipe to keep it warm in winter. I have another picture over here, and this was taken from under the piping rack. So all the pipes are above us and the coolers are above us, and we're kind of looking maybe not exactly towards the area where the previous picture was taken, but what I think is at the back here is that tank, that Amine storage tank we were talking about. And these two pumps, from what I understand, those two pumps are actually the pumps that pump the lean amine into our high pressure and low pressure contactors. So yeah, pretty cool stuff to see, because you know, I may have walked past here a few times, never paying attention to any of this stuff, but it's kind of interesting, because now that I actually understand what's going on in here, seeing pictures like that is feels really good, seeing all this stuff and making a connection in my head how it fits into overall kind of system. So according to my list, this is all I have for you today. So in the next videos we'll probably talk about the sour water system and the SRUs, the sulfur recovery. So yeah, thank you very much for joining me today. I hope you learned a lot today, and I will see you next time. Bye bye now.